people tell you the myth that high risk creates high returns. Where if that were really true, why are we investing in the stock market? We should throw all of our money into buying lottery tickets because that has the highest risk, highest chance of loss. But high risk creates high returns. So huge returns in the lottery. So we should just throw all of our money into lottery and see how we do.
Financial independence,
freedom,
financial picture,
independent financially,
financial future,
financial freedom and wealth,
financial independence.
Get your fill, financial independence and long life. Welcome back to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we explore cool ways to achieve those two goals. And amazing people come on to help us. Like today, Chris Miles is with us. He is the anti-financial advisor. He teaches entrepreneurs and professionals how to get their money working for them today, not like when they're 75 years old. He's an author and he's a podcast host of the Money Ripples podcast. So be sure to check that out. He's been featured on U.S. News, CNN Money, Entrepreneurs on Fire, and many more. And now he's really elevated because he's on Get Your Fill podcast. With his company, Money Ripples, his personal clients have increased their cash flow by $300 million plus in the last 13 years. So that sounds like something we want to hear about. Hi, Chris. Thanks for being with us today.
Such a pleasure to be on here, Christine.
So I guess let's have a little background on you first, and then we'll just jump right into all the really good stuff. So how did you get involved in this line of work, in this calling, I think it is, right, for you?
Yeah, I mean, easy. Not doing what not doing the usual line, right? Like taking a different detour in life. So yeah, I wasn't taught about money a lot, other than that there was always a scarcity of it growing up, right? Hey, we can't afford this. What do you think? Money grows on trees. I'm not made of money, those kind of things I'd hear growing up all the time. We can't afford this. And so I vowed I never wanted to be that way. Yeah. And so when I, went to college, I was planning to become a business consultant, but I figured if I'm going to do that, shouldn't I have real life business experience? So I took a hiatus from my college career, so to speak, right? And I said, all right, I got to find some business to do, and then I'll go back and finish my MBA. Well, as I did that, the first business that came up that intrigued me was being a financial advisor, not knowing that it was so easy to become a financial advisor, that all you had to do is pass a test and not be a criminal, and you're in. And
that's
so
not easy, it sounds.
Yeah, I guess for some people it may not be easy, right? Yeah, it depends. So anyways, so that's the path I took, and I actually love being an entrepreneur so much. I actually never finished my college degree. I stayed dropped out, never went back, because I realized really being an entrepreneur, you can make a whole heck of a lot more money than you would be just taking the usual 9-to-5 type job. And really, I wanted that freedom of time freedom and money freedom and things like that, that I knew that if somebody else dictated the terms of my own life, that wouldn't be good. So I didn't want to be like my dad, who worked for that job for, years and years and years. He thought he would be loyal to them for 40 years, but then they lay you off or they downsize or whatever they might be. And then he's scrambling to find another job. And in fact, he even told me, he said, Chris, I think my job will literally kill me. And he had strokes by his 40s and even by, heart attacks in his 50s. And so he was on that path. And I didn't want to follow that same path as him. Yeah. Well, a few years in, as I'm a financial advisor, he reaches out to me, he says, Chris, when you can become my financial advisor? I said, wow, okay, well, let's talk. Never expected that, since he was so guarded about his money. He would never reveal what his money situation was, right? He always thought people were trying to take his money. Again, scarcity. Yeah. So I sit down with him for the first time and see his numbers, first time ever. And as I look at his numbers, I say, Dad, great job. You got debt free, including paying off your house in 18 years. That's amazing. You've stuffed your 401k like every good boy and good girl should. But I have something to tell you. If you're 61 years old and you want to retire right now, you better hope you die in 5 years, because that's how long it's going to be before you run out of money. And he said, well, that's not what I want to hear. What else can I do? And I said, I don't know. You did everything right.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized there was a problem here, because I've been selling people the dream. I've been selling them a bunch of hopium, right? I've been telling them, hey, listen, if you just keep saving, pay off your debt, just like Dave Ramsey tells you to do, you should become financially free like everybody else, investing it and gambling it in the stock market. Well, he was the poster child for what people were supposed to be doing, and it still wasn't enough. And it became more apparent a few weeks later as I'm talking with a friend who I'd hired to be a financial advisor, but then left to go do real estate investing, something crazy, right? And then we're talking about it, and he said, Chris, well, how many of your clients are financially free? and specifically not just, retired, but really where they don't worry about money even in retirement.
Right.
I said, oh, well, that's none of them. They all worry about running out of money.
Right.
Well, great job, Chris. I'm sure you're helping a lot of people now. Well, how about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing these same investments? And as I was really honest with myself, and there was over 100 people in our office, I said, well, none, because there's people who've been working here since the late 1970s and they still can't retire.
Right.
There's your problem, Chris. And that got me down this journey of looking for something else because I realized it wasn't working in the traditional financial advisor, save and compounding interest and gambling in the market and hoping you have enough someday. That wasn't working. And so I started looking at alternative investments, things like real estate investing, where instead you're actually paid passive income or cash flow from those investments. You actually have real income coming from them. And as I started to apply it in my own life, guess what? I quit being a financial advisor for one, because I realized I couldn't be in integrity and teach something that doesn't work. And then two, later on that next year, I was able to retire myself when I was 28 years old, doing those other strategies. And that was a big epiphany for me. I thought, oh my goodness, it was way simpler, way easier than I had been making it as a financial advisor. And that's when I made that shift. And of course, when you do something crazy like retiring when you're 28, everybody wants to know how you do it. So eventually in 2007, I came out of retirement to teach people how to do what I did. And that's what I've been really doing is that's why I'm the anti-financial advisor, right? Because I'm telling people not to follow that traditional advice that has been proven not to work and do something better, do something that actually has worked for literally tens of millions of people.
It's interesting, isn't it, that people think it's less risky to have a financial advisor and to like, oh, real estate's so risky. These other investments are so risky. It's like, well, why? Why is that more risky? Because I suppose because there's more of their own personal judgment in there and they could make a bigger mistake, right?
That's right. Well, it's funny because you say that because someone had just emailed me the other day and they said, and as they're kind of breaking into this world, they said, honestly, we're having a hard time breaking away from what our financial advisors have been teaching us. We're very risk averse. And I said, you know what? I'm really risk averse too, which is why I don't put any of my money with financial advisors or in the stock market. And I haven't heard a response to that yet, but it's true because think of the definition of loss. It's called, the definition of loss is chance of loss, or sorry, definition of risk is chance of loss, right? What's your chance of losing? Well, if you want to have, people tell you the myth that high risk creates high returns. Where if that were really true, why are we investing in the stock market? We should throw all of our money into buying lottery tickets because that has the highest risk, highest chance of loss, but high risk creates high returns. So huge returns in the lottery. So we should just throw all of our money into the lottery and see how we do. That's just ridiculous. Now, someone might say, well, we got to balance it. Yeah, but understand that everybody's telling you to take all the risks while those financial institutions, those companies take guaranteed returns off your money. They're pulling off fees, whether you make money or not.
Right.
Who's the real investor? Who's the real smart, intelligent person here? It's those companies that are taking those fees, whether you make money or not, while you take all the risk. You lose money, it's only you that loses money, not them. That's why I had to leave. That's why I was passionate about just getting away from that industry because I felt like not knowing it because I really did care about people. But after waking up to that reality, I realized I was kind of a liar and a deceiver. Even if I was self-deceived or deceived by the people I work for, which really financial advisors don't work for you. They work for the companies that sell you that stuff.
Exactly. And yeah, follow the money.
Exactly. It's just like the pharmaceutical industry, right? Just follow the money. You'll find out where the real lies come up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then what's the alternative, right? What if people want to know that they could retire and when they can retire, what are their alternatives?
Yeah, everybody thinks that you're supposed to invest on Wall Street, right? But many people don't realize there's Main Street investing too. And Main Street investing is what, all the other financial advisors in the financial industry will call alternative investments, but they're really the Main Street investments. Those are things like in real estate, for example. Now, what many people don't realize that investing in real estate doesn't mean going and buying that property in your backyard. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, right? Because they go and try to buy a property. Like I live in the Western half of the United States. Almost anything in the Western half of the United States is a horrible investment. But if I look out towards the Southeast or the Midwest, I can buy properties for less and still get paid a higher return on my money with those rents. Now,
Right.
it doesn't mean I have to be the one that's the property manager. That's always the fear, right? People are like, well, I
Right.
don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to be a person dealing with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash. Well, neither do I, which is
Yeah.
why I find what's called turnkey real estate investments as one just option. Turnkey real estate means you actually have a company that helps you find the property. You don't have to go hunting for it. They find the properties for you. You know the exact returns you're going to make when you get into it. You buy the property, and then a property manager takes care of that property for you. So you're not dealing with the tenants. You're not dealing with all those issues. The only time you get contacted is if there's something major that really happens, which might happen maybe a few times a year if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
That's much more passive. But the crazy thing I didn't realize though is that I always thought that was real estate investing, and that's even better than the real estate investing I was picturing as a financial advisor. But there's other things you can do too. Like for example, you can lend your money out to other real estate investors. You can become the bank for them. Let's think about it. The banks, that's how they make their money, isn't it? They borrow from you by taking your money in savings. That's their debt, right? They pay you a cruddy, point nothing percent return. Maybe if you're like a couple percent or even 5% on that 6 month CD,
Yeah.
they'll pay you that. But then they turn around and loan you that same money at 7, 8, 10% or higher
Yeah.
to make at least double the returns off of your money, right? That's what they're doing. Well, what if you could take the rules of those banks, the same things that they've done to make them a lot of money, and you do the same thing? What if you lend your money to investors? Well, they'll pay you at least, usually worst case, someone will try to pay you lowball you at 8%, but usually most of the investors that we deal with are like 10, 11, 12 plus percent a year
Yeah.
contractually that they're paying you for that money.
Right.
And
Plus,
that's the big
don't
difference.
forget the clothing costs and the points and stuff up front.
Yeah. So say, for example, they might pay you 1% up front and then they pay you like 9, 10 plus percent on the back end too. You actually end up finding out you make even more than just, 1% plus. It actually ends up coming out a little bit better depending on the amount of time that they take your money for. So there's all these kind of things there. Even in the oil and gas space, you can actually, go in, buy land that you then rent to the oil companies. Believe it or not, oil companies don't even want to buy land. They just want to rent it from you, do their work, and then they even will share the royalties with you when they drill and they make money off that. And yes, even natural gas, which is a cleaner, greener energy. I'm not saying it's completely green. There's arguments over that, but it's greener than oil, right? That even there, all the things they pull out of the earth, you get cut in on, So there's things like that. Even you could even potentially go into businesses like car washes. You could go into things like raw land. You can go into things that are like apartments or self-storage units, which self-storage tends to be more recession resistant during
Yeah.
times when there's harder times because people downsize, got to have a place to put their junk. So they put it in self-storage and that's where you make money, right?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of ways. When you realize that there's this whole world of ways to make money, you start to really realize, like, why am I being sold one single product from financial advisors? Even though they'll call it different names, it's really just mutual funds and or insurance. That's it. That's all they offer. And it's always paper assets. It's never really backed by anything real or intangible, right? Where these
Yeah.
are backed by real assets. That's just like what I told that guy. I said, I'm more risk averse than you are. I buy real assets. You gamble in some arbitrary stocks that you don't even know if they make money. So don't tell me you're risk averse if you're going to go keep putting your money in their 401ks or with your financial advisor because you're a risky person. You're gambling with your future by putting in those things. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's not risky, right? There's a plenty of people that do risky things that are popular, right? That's why McDonald's is still in business. People do risky things with their health because it's popular, right? That's the thing. It's like just because everybody does one thing doesn't make it right. And
Right.
the truth is, there's still, like I said, tens of millions of us that actually do these strategies, and we have a much higher success rate than anybody who puts money in mutual funds. In fact, let me give you some real numbers. Fidelity came out with their numbers recently. Of all other 45 million clients. Now you would think since, a good portion, roughly almost 30%, 35% are baby boomers, right? At this point, they should have at least what everybody's been telling us. Dave Ramsey says you save $100 a month for 40 years at 12%, you'll make $1 million, right? Well, guess what? Of all those 45 million clients that Fidelity has, guess how many actually broke the $1 million mark? 1.5%.
No way.
1.5%. That's it.
Wow. That's
What's even
appalling.
crazier is that of that 1.5%, right? The Transamerica did another study separately and said of those people who have over $1 million, how many people think they feel comfortable or they feel like they can actually retire? 35% of those surveyed said, quote, "It will take a miracle for me to be able to retire." And again, they're in the top 1.5%. So that means really only the top 1% says, "I think I'm okay." Right. Not like what most people say, where they say, "Oh, it's everybody." And even financial advisor, I remember they would quote from the Census Bureau saying, "Well, 1% is financially independent, 5% of this." Well, what's the 1% doing? They're investing in stocks. No, many of them are not. Now, some of them are, right? Some of them do have stocks in their portfolio, but that may not be the thing that got them financially independent or free.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Now, I'll give you a real life example of this to kind of bring it home, because this is the big difference. Going back to your original question, is we had a guy actually that he was retiring from the military. He was one of the top ranking generals. He actually saved $1 million in his retirement account. So he went to his financial advisor, and his financial advisor says, "Good. Now you can live on 30,000 a year." Because now you've heard some people talk about the 4% rule, which is not a rule. It's really a myth. It was based on numbers that were taken through 1976. So
Yeah.
they're 50-year-old numbers, right? Stats. They've since updated this, and now it's closer to about 3%. So financial advisors are saying, if you don't want to run out of money by the time you die, especially with inflation, and by the way, they factored inflation being like 2.5%, which I think is a complete lie. They say that you can then live on 3% a year to adjust for inflation and everything else. Well, think about that. He saved up $1 million. He is a millionaire, and they're telling him to live below the poverty line. That's a broke millionaire. So our client, Dan, he said, "I can't do that." So he started searching for ways to do that. He found our Money Ripples podcast online. He started listening to it. He reached out and he said, "Can I do something more with this money?" Well, we sat down, met with him. He did some investments. He got some duplexes. He got into some of that oil and gas type things where he's leasing the land. He even did some things with apartments and whatnot. Next thing you know, is instead of 30,000 a year, he's now has 130,000 a year of income coming in. That's the difference, right? Because
That's
that's
more
income,
like
and
it.
that's not touching his principal. Remember, when they're talking about 30,000 a year, and then you have to raise it with inflation every year, they're talking about just what will it take for you to not run out of money, not live on the interest, live on
Yeah.
less than the interest, hopefully at first, to then eventually, because inflation, it'll probably end up beating your interest rate, so you'll run out of money later. That's
Yeah.
what they're talking about. So for him to be able to have that drastic change in lifestyle from 30,000 a year to 130,000 a year, that's the difference. So that's the big thing we try to tell people and help them understand. It's not about how much money you accumulate, although that's nice. It's about how hard that money works for you to generate
Exactly.
income streams so that you don't have to work so hard for it.
Well, if he would have done that earlier, right, he would have had a lot more than $1 million in the first place, right? If he was able to reinvest that 130,000 every year or whatever, he would have
Yeah,
been in a situation where, he would have even more every year.
it's true. I actually talked with a couple just the other day. They're in their just early 50s, and they do have some money in the market. They did put money in the 401k because that's what you're supposed to do. But early on, when they're about 30 years old, they started buying some real estate with one of their parents. And because one of their parents was saying, I know that real estate works. Let's go in together. So they went in together on some real estate. I was shocked to find, I said, "Wait a minute, I'm looking at your real estate here. You've got just in the real estate equity alone, there's like over $4 million of equity."
Nice.
And the truth, and they were making 150,000 a year. And I said, the sad thing is that you could probably make at least double with this equity. There's probably properties we should be selling off, reinvesting in other properties that will pay a higher return to get
Yeah.
that 150,000 to about 300,000 a year. Not to mention you've got money sitting in savings just been sitting around you didn't know what to do with. That should actually generate probably close almost $100,000 a year more. Their goal was to have an extra $200,000 a year in hopefully the next 5 or 10 years. I said, I mean, even if I say conservatively, even if we don't sell your properties, we probably can help increase your cash flow by an additional 100,000 a year on top of your 150,000 a year you're already getting. And I congratulate them. I said, the fact that you actually went and bought real estate at such a young age, you're doing what I want our listeners to remember, right? Like you've proven it to work. Where so many people come to me, they said, "I've been stuffing this 401k for 30 years. This is what I've got." And it might be hundreds of thousands. They might be lucky over 1 million, but then they realize, "Oh, but I'm not 60 years old yet. I can't touch it because
Right.
they'll slap me with penalties and then they'll tax me on top of those penalties just for trying to get to it early." And so they did it right, and even though they were doing some of the traditional stuff, they still did it so much better.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, even though they did it right, they could still do it better, right? They
Yeah.
could still get better return on the same assets that they have right there. And that's the thing that excites me, is that there are so many people out there today. And I guarantee right now, any of you listening, you're probably some of those people that your money could actually be working much harder for you, that you've been slaving away for years, because you thought, just like I thought when I was a financial advisor, being brainwashed and trained that way, is that I would have to accumulate at least $2 or $3 million before I could finally enjoy my life. And that's just not true.
Yeah. And actually, I think I figured out I needed with this back when it was the 4% rule, I still was going to need like $5 million. It's like,
Yeah,
what are the chances that I'm going to save that up?
exactly. It's almost impossible. In fact, if you really adjust for closer to real rates of inflation, I even try to be very liberal with inflation, to say, and I say liberal, I mean that I make it lower than what I think it actually is.
Yeah.
Even then, what I've noticed is that when you look at the real power of your money over time, whatever you save per year in your 401k, even with the match, is what you'll live on per year after inflation, when you adjust it for
God.
inflation. So think about it. To max fund a 401k right now is about 21,000 a year, right? Well, if you save 21,000 a year, that means you're going to live on about 21,000 a year. The only reason our other client, Dan, the only reason he was able to have more in his 401k plan is because he happened to just be lucky. He just made these lucky moves where before Y2K, he decided to pull his money and move it out of the stock market into something else, into more like bonds and things like that. So when the stocks, especially the tech stocks, all crashed, he didn't lose any money. So he was ahead. And then he went back into stocks when it was lower. And then before the last recession, the Great Recession, right? He did the same thing. He moved his money out just before it crashed and then put it back in when it was at a low. So he actually defied the odds by having perfect timing, which almost nobody does.
Right.
And even then, his financial advisor says, "Great, you ready to live on 30,000 a year?" I mean, think of how ridiculous that is.
I know. And it's sad, right? I mean, you feel like I did everything right and I've been saving and doing without, right? I haven't had my latte or whatever and got my got all my
Yeah,
money in the bank, and the power and the magic of compounding interest. What happened? What happened to me?
exactly. That's what happened to my dad. That's why I'm so passionate about that, right? Because he was a casualty of that as well. And the problem is, I mean, it's good and bad. Even though he had all these health problems, modern medicine's kept him alive. So
So
he's
he
now
needs
had to
the money.
stretch those dollars even more. He had to work into his 70s is what ended up happening.
Oh
He didn't
gosh.
take much more the alternative route. He just kind of stayed that path. Retired in his 70s, and now he's 79 and just trying to make every dollar stretch.
Yeah.
Even to the point where I'm even trying to help him out a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's that's the reality. That's what people are facing today, and it's amazing how it's not more prevalent in the media. And probably the truth is that if it's a financial news type of media, well, guess who's paying all their sponsorship bills?
Exactly.
It's your Fidelities, it's your Goldman Sachs, your Merrill Lynch's, right? All these companies are the ones paying the bills. They're not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Right.
That's the problem. So yeah, don't try to go to the media to see if you'll find the real advice. Go to people that actually have real life experience with this. Go look at the reality. And
Right.
it's scary. It really is.
Absolutely. And also your dad is a perfect, if your plan for retirement was to die young, that might fail. That might backfire on you. So
It's true. We all he even expected that he wouldn't outlive his own father, even his brother who's in better health. He outlived his brother. He's the only person he hasn't outlived now is his own mother, who's in great health, and now he's approaching up to her age when she passed away. So it's you just never know what's going to happen in life, and that's the thing. You could be alive, but not really living. You know what I mean when I say that? Like you can be alive, but you may not have the ability to really truly live. I mean, his health problems have kept him from being able to be mobile, right? He can't drive his own car anymore or do anything
yeah.
like that. I can guarantee if someone would say, you know what, you've got 1 week to live, I'm going to take you out fishing, that would be the best week for him ever. But he never thought that was going to be the case. He thought that somehow he'd have a quick, easy death like his other family members, right? The quick heart attack that will kill him. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
You don't want to be caught in that trap. You never want to be trying to count on that. And it's true. Let's go the other way. What if you do die younger, right? What if that does happen? You die even before you expect it. Think about it. You try to sacrifice and suffer and save as much as you can for so many years. only to realize you never got to enjoy that money because you always kept putting away for someday. Well, what if you end up dying when you're 50 or 55 years old? Heaven forbid, of course, but what if that happens? What were the memories you might have lost out on with your family and with the people that you love and doing the things that you love versus trying to slave away until eventually you're just gone in an instant? What good did that do? And
Right.
that's the kind of thing I'm grateful for because, with my life, like granted, I mean, the bigger my business gets, the more I have to keep trying to figure out how to fire myself from my own business. But I can shut this business down today if I want to, but I'm
Yeah.
just so passionate about creating that ripple effect, which is why we're called Money Ripples, right?
Yeah.
Creating that ripple effect through people's lives. And I'll tell you, like, I mean, the fact that I can go and take off a month, in the middle of winter when it's snowing and cold and
Yeah.
miserable, right? Be able to do that and go somewhere and have that freedom to do that. I remember my dad even told me, he says, I remember talking to him about some of the trips I had done and, just last spring even. And some of them were business related, but we're like, hey, well, let's stay an extra week in St. Augustine, Florida, and just
Yeah.
enjoy it and enjoy the history, right? Or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. My dad's like, I don't even understand your life. Like, I never had that benefit. He's like, I'd go, drive an hour and a half to go fishing sometimes, but he never really got to have that level of freedom while he was in his working years, which lasts until his 70s. Don't follow that example. Don't follow that Dave Ramsey example of what he did. Do something better. Do something different.
Well, and the other point is, even if you do live a long, healthy, wonderful life, it's still a lot more fun to travel when you're younger, right?
It is.
I mean, it's just, let's face it, you're healthier, you're more fit, it's things are easier, you've got potentially less, a little more tolerance for airport delays or whatever. It's just like things aren't as difficult as they are when you get older and more tired and things like that. I mean, it's just not. Plus, you can focus on your health more when you don't have to be working some kind of shit job where, either it's beating you up because it's a really manual job, or you're sitting on your butt all day and,
Mhm.
not getting any kind of exercise.
That's so true.
Stress.
I take that for granted as well that I can afford whatever, wellness and health that I try to do. Like,
Yeah.
we can eat organic, right? We eat better foods, better quality foods.
Yeah.
Even just like getting, you know,
Massages.
recovery, like with chiropractic or
Yep.
massage or,
Yep.
physical therapists I have, especially after I do my marathon races and things like that, be able to bounce back and recover so much faster because I can afford that kind of care.
Right.
And you mentioned about the kids too. Like you don't want to be singing cats in the cradle, crying your eyes out, right?
Yeah.
Realizing that you were so busy and when you're finally ready to have that time with them, it's too late. They have their own lives, they're busy doing their own things.
Yeah.
I currently have 6 teenagers between my wife and I. We have a blended family of 8 kids. 6 of them
Wow.
are in the teenage years right now. And the ones that are the oldest, once they get to about the point of almost college, they're working their jobs and everything else. It's almost impossible to try to schedule something with them because there's like, no, I got to do this. I got to do this school. I got to do my old job. I can't just take off a week or 2 weeks. They're already putting themselves in their own rat race because they feel like they got to do it. We want to teach them to be responsible. At the same time, they're realizing, oh, I'm becoming an adult. This is tough. So the best time to be able to spend time with your family is before they get too busy, before they have too
Right.
many commitments, too many sports or extracurriculars and everything else, is to
Exactly.
help enjoy that time with them right now.
Exactly. Absolutely. Chris, I can't believe how fast our time is flying by. What
Yeah.
is one question that you wish I would have asked you that I haven't asked you? Something that you just want to make sure people know and that, they walk away with.
I'll just say this is that it's maybe not a question, but I would just have this final parting thought so that there's always hope. There's more hope than you probably realize. It just requires a different way of thinking, doing it different in a way that actually has been proven to work. That's what I always emphasize so much with our clients. Whether clients are doing passive income stuff, even we teach like this infinite banking strategy to help your money make money in 2 places at once. We combine that with it so that they speed up their results. I mean, all those things. It's the things that you don't know that you don't know is the very thing that could actually bring you the most hope. And so I would just say I just want to leave you with a message of hope that you can have a different life than maybe maybe in the life that you were hoping to get, but maybe it's not giving you that life quite yet. There's definitely hope.
Yeah. So, Chris, how can people reach you? Besides, of course, they have to listen to Money Ripples podcast. But if they just
Yeah,
want to be
that's a
like,
great
look,
way.
I got some cash, it's not doing its job. How can I put it to work? How can they reach you?
Yeah, the cool thing you do is you go to moneyripples.com, and especially if you've got cash, you're not sure what it can actually do. we have an actual passive income calculator where you just answer like 10 questions, and we can actually find out pretty accurately how much passive income that money that you have or the assets you have could create for you in the next 12 months. So definitely try that out. It's kind of a fun calculator.
Absolutely. And that could give you hope just by itself. And that's not hopium. That's actual hope.
It's math. Yeah, it's actually
Yeah.
pretty easy.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time. And we didn't even get to talk about infinite banking or anything else, but maybe you could come on again sometime.
I would be honored. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you, listener, for listening. Think right now of at least 2 people who either they have cash that isn't working for them, or they'd like to have cash that would work for them. And forward this episode to them, because Chris has a lot to share, and they will definitely thank you for doing it. And in the meantime, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week.